Greetings Internet, it's Monica, and today I am sharing with you the books that I am most excited to read this autumn. I have so many books that I want to read this autumn, including all of the books that I recently hauled in my last book haul. I'm going to avoid talking about those books because I literally just talked about them, but know that all of them are also in the books that I definitely want to read this autumn list. But in this video, I am going to be sharing a few upcoming releases that I'm excited for, some recent releases that I can't wait to start, and a few autumnal books that have just been on my TBR for quite a while. So to start, I'm going to share a few of the books that are coming out very soon in the month of October. So I'm going to kick this off by talking about some of the upcoming releases. All of these books are coming out in the month of October, and the first one is Damsel, which comes out on October 2nd. Now, this book I'm really intrigued for because it plays off of the sort of trope of the damsel in distress. In this story, you follow this main character who wakes up in this tower not knowing anything that has happened to her previously, completely forgetting her history, and she ends up being rescued by this prince who tells her that now she owes him her life and must become his wife. So it is, I'm assuming, a story about consent and agency, and that's going to look at a lot of really common fairy tale tropes and sort of turn them on their head. I'm really excited for that. It sounds absolutely amazing. I will say that even though this book is billed as YA, it does sound like there are a lot of really dark topics in it. So I know that there are trigger warnings out there for this book for rape, sexual assault, abuse, self-harm, suicide, and animal abuse. So keep all of that in mind in case those are topics that you aren't comfortable reading about. But I am really intrigued for this one and am hopeful that it is amazing because it sounds like it could be amazing and very feministy. Then on October 23rd, The Light Between Worlds comes out. This one I'm excited for because it gives me Narnia meets Every Heart a Doorway vibes. Basically, it follows two sisters who are in London and are hiding from the bombings that are happening there during the war. They end up falling into this mythical forest called the Woodlands, I believe. And this is basically this forest kingdom filled with like myths and legends. Eventually they do end up returning back to London, and one of the sisters becomes obsessed with going back while the other sister just wants to go back to life as normal. And so this book looks, first of all, the cover looks absolutely stunning, and the story sounds like it will be very atmospheric and potentially whimsical, potentially very dark, probably sad, and it just sounds amazing. So I cannot wait to pick this one up this autumn. On October 30th, The Brilliant Death comes out, and this book I'm so excited for because it is a YA fantasy that features gender fluid characters, and that is amazing. I'm so excited for that. And the author is Demigirl, and her pronouns are she, her. The plot also just sounds amazing outside of the representation. It follows this girl who is able to she works for her family, who are this like mafia family, and her dad is like the Don of the mafia, and she works in the family by turning the enemies of the family into inanimate objects. And then at the start of the story, her dad ends up being poisoned, so she goes on this mission to try to cure him. And during this mission, she ends up teaming up with CeeLo, who also has their own form of magic, and they're able to switch between male and female. And I'm just really excited to see how this magic system is done. It just sounds fascinating to me. The story, like being part of like a mafia family, sounds really interesting to me. I'm not certain of like what the setting of this book is. I don't think it's modern day. I'm pretty sure it's like old-timey. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah, I'm just very excited for this book. It sounds amazing. The representation sounds hopefully amazing, and yeah, it's just all of it. I'm just so excited to read it. Also on October 30th comes out what is one of my most anticipated books of this entire year. I'm so hyped, and that is Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. This is the sequel to Nevermore by Jessica Townsend, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It is the book that made me fall back in love with middle grade fiction. Basically, every time a middle grade fantasy comes out, someone is comparing it to Harry Potter, but every time I fall for it, I get mad because it's never true, but this one, it's actually kind of true. This is the first that ever comes close, in my opinion. This book follows Morrigan Crow, who is seen as this like really bad omen in her town. Everything bad that happens there is blamed on her, and she's supposed to die on her 13th birthday, and everyone is kind of looking forward to it. However, on her 13th birthday, when she is supposed to be dying, comes in this charismatic man who whisks her off to the land of Nevermore, and the story takes off from there. It's so good. The magic is beautiful. Like, it's just such a wonderful story to fall into, and I'm so excited that it's coming out during fall because it's such a perfect like autumn read. If you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend it. I also recommend it for fans of Doctor Who because there are like elements of it that kind of remind me of the Doctor character. Also, if you're like a big Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory fan, there's like elements of that in there too. Like the whole fact that it's this like really whimsical world, but there's this sort of darkness lurking underneath. Really into it. Love this book. Highly recommend it if you have not picked it up yet. Now I have a stack of books that some of them have been recently released, some of them I just want to read. I'll start off with the ones that have been recently released. The first one that I want to read is Wildcard by Marie Lu. This is the sequel to Warcross and the finale. It's a duology, and this is a world that takes place, and this is a story that takes place a little bit into the future of our world. Basically, virtual reality, augmented reality have become incredibly common and really advanced, which, by the way, is so cool. Like, the world of this is so fantastical, and I loved reading about it. I love VR and AR. I think they're both really, really interesting, and I'm super excited for both of those things to be something that we can actually use on an everyday basis, and that for it not to be incredibly expensive. But yeah, I loved that part of this story. But in the first one, you follow Amika, who is this like amazing gamer and hacker, and she ends up hacking her way into the international tournament for a game called Warcross, which like everyone in the world is obsessed with. And through that ends up getting involved in all of this mystery and intrigue that is occurring. And it's so good, so fun, so twisty. I absolutely loved it. I've heard some people compare this to Ready Player One. Personally, I think it's better because it doesn't rely on pop culture references in order to get people to love it, but that's just me. But yeah, I love the first book in this duology, and I cannot wait to pick up the sequel. Then I am hoping to pick up The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. I talked about this in a recent video, and I realized that I gave the synopsis kind of wrong, but this book is a retelling of the story of Troy and the Trojan War, and it follows one girl. Her name is Briseis, and according to the blurb, Briseis is just one among thousands of women living behind the scenes in this war. The slaves and prostitutes, the nurses, the women who lay out the dead, all of them erased by history. And so this is the story of just sort of a person who is living through this epic story that, you know, we all know, and we all know the main characters of, but we don't know the thousands of people who were also involved, and especially the women. And so this is telling that story through Briseis. I'm so excited for this. I love stories that take like a really well-known story or point in history or something and changes it to where it's looks at it from a whole new perspective, basically. And I think that's what this is going to do. I also think it's going to be hella feminist, which I'm really excited for. Another book that recently came out that I don't currently have a copy of right now, I don't think. It might be over in Kaylee's room, I'm not sure, but it is Patrick Ness's And the Ocean Was Our Sky. This is his most recent release. I love Patrick Ness. He is one of my favorite authors of all time. I love all of his books that he has written, that I've read, and this is one that's sort of in the tradition of his book A Monster Calls, in that it is a narrative story, but it's told with many illustrations. But this one is the story of Moby Dick told from the whale's perspective, and I just cannot wait to pick it up. I know I'm gonna love it. I love everything Patrick Ness does, so really excited for this one. Then I just have a few books that I really want to get to over the next couple of months. The first one is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and when I was younger, adored Maureen Johnson's books, and this one sounds very autumnal because it takes place at a private school in Vermont, and nothing says autumn like rich people in Vermont. But basically, at this private school in the 1940s, there were a series of murders, and the murderer would sign all of these notes that they would leave, which were riddles, with Truly Devious. And this girl, Stevie Bell, is set to begin her first year at the school, and all of a sudden a murder occurs and it's signed Truly Devious. And so she is this like mystery true crime aficionado, so she is sort of looking to try and solve the mystery that is happening here, and I'm really intrigued for this. I have heard amazing things about this book. Everyone I know who has read it has been raving about it ever since it came out, but I feel like not a lot of people have read it despite that. So really excited to pick this one up this fall. Seems like the perfect time for a nice murder mystery set on the East Coast. Another book that I'm hoping to pick up is a middle grade, and it is The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding. This is a book about a boy whose family has been haunted by a ghost for generations, and he is also being haunted by this ghost, and he has to deal with that. I'm not 100% on what this plot is about. However, all I know is that every time people talk about it, they basically say it is the perfect Halloween read. So I have downloaded it from Scribd, planning on reading it this October. Really excited for that. And then the last book that I want to read this October is another middle grade, and it is The Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls by Claire Legrand. This is a story about misfit children who end up all going missing in this small town, and this girl Victoria, one of her friends Lawrence, ends up being one of these children who disappears, and they all seem to disappear into the Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls, and so she begins to look into the mystery of what is going on. Just from the cover alone, it looks super atmospheric and autumnal, so cannot wait to pick this one up also. So yeah, those are the books that I am planning on picking up this autumn. Of course, on top of all of these, I'm planning on picking up Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl, which I am reading with Emma from Miss Emma Reads a Lot for our Magical Girl Book Club, which if you have not heard about, I will link my recent haul video in the description down below where I talk about this at length. I'll also link the Tumblr down below in case you want some of the finer details. And yeah, that is everything. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love to hear from you what books you're excited to either read this fall or pick up, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye!